Well, we're here with Jon Goodman, our new academy manager. You've been in the role for a month or so now, Jon. How are you finding it here at Meadow Lane?
Yep, every day thus far has been really full days actually, just learning a lot about how the academy's been set up, meeting all the staff, not only full-time staff but all the part-time coaches who are based at Basford, getting an understanding of the vision of the chairman as well. I know the first team in terms of Richard Thomas, the assistant manager, and his views on how the academy would run moving forward. So I'm just gathering as much information as I can, but now the scholars are back in as well, so we're just getting operational, getting back up to speed in terms of our day-to-day training as well.
Obviously you come here from the Nike Academy, which is a unique setup, isn't it? Very different, I suppose, to a football club, but with similarities as well, I assume.
Yeah, unusual for any brand to get involved in full-time football. The programme was run as a professional football academy, so we had a very strong support staff, wonderful facility at St George's Park, and really focused on the development of players. So like our academy here, we're all about developing the players, but the Nike one was based around 24. This one's based around maybe 120, 130 players that sit within the academy.
So when you first walked through the door here at Notts in this role, what was the first thing you wanted to do and first thing you wanted to check out?
Well, really try and bring some ideas or some values I had around how players develop, and not only as players on the field but as young men off the field as well. So it was trying to understand the Notts County philosophy, understanding the chairman's vision, Kevin and Richard's vision at the top as well, and aligning that with my own views about how players develop and how we improve them, and then just seeing what was already in place. Getting to know Dan, Simon, Craig Wallace, Craig Gordon, Amy, and all the full-time staff within the academy, to really understand where the programme currently is and where we can improve further and really make strides as the first team continues to make strides throughout the seasons.
You mentioned there about your sort of objectives and what you want to see from the players and also your staff. What would you say, if you could pick maybe one or two key objectives in your mind, what would they be?
I guess, listen, our remit is to produce and develop players that can play first team football for Notts County, what division we go into. So that's the ultimate aim. Historically, I've always worked with players in terms of expressing themselves with real athleticism as well. So the players we produced at Nike were strong athletes, very creative, very positive thinking players. We always would look at and evaluate a player in terms of what's their greatest strength, how do we develop that strength, and as well raise their weaknesses to ensure that they can cope with the demands of professional football. So every player is unique and we have to accept and address that, but as well within Notts County we'll have a certain style and a certain philosophy we'll work to that our players should embrace.
In terms of the Nike Academy, it puts it into context for Notts fans that George Grant was a graduate from there, and obviously that's somebody you work with really, really closely. Must have been great for you to watch him performing so well for Notts last year.
Absolutely, and I guess what we learned at Nike was there are players out there, either released from clubs or not yet in the system, that can go on and have professional careers, and George always had the character, I feel, the grit, as well as good talent, and he's a good athlete as well. So he had all the right ingredients to go and be successful. And it was lovely to see him. The day I was being interviewed here, I was watching the first team train, and George immediately came over and said hello. And it's lovely just to have that rapport with him, But I think during my time at Nike, about 25, 30 players got professional contracts. So there are guys out there that can do it. There are guys within our academy system at the moment that will go and have very successful careers. And George demonstrates the qualities required.
I think one of the key things to a successful academy is a relationship with the first team staff, isn't it? Yeah. It's hugely important. You mentioned Richard Thomas there earlier, and obviously Kevin Nolan. What conversations have you had with the first team football staff in terms of how you can create this pathway from the academy to the first team?
Well, I think it runs, now with EPPP as well. There's a philosophy that has to run from the chairman down. So really, chairman's vision, and he's been bold with his statements around what he would like the squad to consist of in the years to come. Of course, Kevin has to believe and buy into that and believe that we can produce the players to fulfil that. So Richard is a real good conduit for us all because he's got great experience as an academy manager at Leyton Orient, wonderful relationship with the first team manager, obviously as his assistant. So I'll lean on Richard in terms of how he views the academy, how he wants to use the players in terms of his day-to-day training, and as well where he sees them in terms of their pathway. I think the greatest jump sometimes is 18s to first team, and whether that's through a loan system, whether that's through regularly training with the first team players, or just continue training with our group, we'll find a way. And at the moment, I don't have a definite answer on a lot of questions. I'm just trying to absorb as much information as I can and identify what works for us as a club. And like Richard is absolutely essential to that, but Kevin, I've met him once or twice, and he's very clear as well, and he's supportive of everything we're trying to achieve. His eyes are on the first team, but he is very aware of everything that's happening underneath as well.
In terms of your career so far, it's been a really interesting one. Obviously, a really established playing career, and then sports science roles at places like Leeds United, then obviously onto the Nike Academy, and then onto here, your first role at a club as an academy manager. I wonder if the sports science element might be of interest to our supporters in terms of the approach you're going to take with our younger players. Will sports science be even more key now at Notts than it was before, perhaps?
Yeah, I was very lucky when I retired, or got injured and retired early as a player, to do a sports science degree, really when it was in its infancy in the late 90s. So I was one of the first sports scientists to go and work in football. And the reason I chose sports science was, at the time, I didn't feel coaching was definite enough for me. I think with sports science, it's very clear. You measure something, or you measure a player across a number of variables, and you can then create an intervention and improve them. So whether it be fitness, or body fat, or recovery, whatever, there are certain scientific principles you'll work towards. Over the years, it's evolved enormously, and I've been lucky to work some really good support teams at Reading. We had a tremendous couple of seasons there, and a great support staff there. So I still lean on sports science an enormous lot. I think as a coach now, I realise actually coaching is a science as well, and there are good, solid scientific principles you work to as a coach. So collating all that information together and combining it hopefully produces a very strong programme. As I mentioned, we're keen to get an analyst on board so we can film the training sessions, film our matches, code them, and then use them as a learning tool for our players. We've got Claire as a psychologist working full-time within the club now, something that not many League Two clubs have at their disposal. Again, if we look at every particular aspect of player development, there's a scientific rationale behind the best practices, and that's what we're trying to implement, as well as remembering there's a human factor. The guys are young men trying to find their way in life, and there's a lot going on within them, and so every bit that we try to add to the programme is to support and improve them further, empower them to make good decisions themselves, and hopefully have successful careers and be good people.
You mentioned there when you were starting out on your coaching career how sports science seemed the logical way to go, purely because you didn't want to be tied into a specific thing in terms of coaching, but clearly academy management is now the way your career is going. What is it about academy management that you like so much? That's
one of the questions the chairman asked me, really, was in terms of my journey, and I felt I've worked with some great clubs, great managers, generally at first team level. The academy with Nike was 3 years at 17 to 21s, and again, I demonstrated there we could produce players. So I feel that I've got a good handle across a number of disciplines now. So my job is actually to manage the staff as much as anything else, and ensure that the programme stands up and is strong. So I've got, I'll have a conversation with Dapo, who's our physiotherapist at the moment, around the preparation and the warm-up of the players. I'll have a conversation with Simon about the intensity and duration of the training sessions. I'll have a conversation with Ian Toombs about education, So, Claire, again, the psychologist, nutrition in terms of our recovery, and talking to the chefs about what we should be eating post-match. So having a strong understanding across all the areas of player development enables me to ensure that the staff are on the right journey as well, because our staff need to develop as well. The stronger the staff are, the better the players become. So I feel I've got certain strengths. I need to stick to them, but as well ensure that the staff bring their bits to the table as well.
Not the only new addition to the academy staff this summer, Simon Clark also joining. Just tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, I've known Simon for a little while. When he was at Charlton as a 23s coach, he'd looked at a couple of our players and signed a couple of our players from Nike as well. So I know he's a tremendous coach, got a real eye for detail, very enthusiastic and positive, and great to have around the place. He will drive and lead the 18s, and I'll support him with that, but it's his team, and he'll work with them. And we've had a couple of days training. I've really enjoyed seeing him work. The lads are responding as well. So yeah, I think again it's a strength that he's worked at first team level, so he knows the finished product and what it looks like, which is really important, because we can't train a 16, 17-year-old's needs. We have to push them towards what a first team training session looks like, and what a first team performance looks like.
I believe the boys are back in pre-season training already in this weather. It doesn't seem like summer, does it?
No.
Just talk us through what they've done so far and why they're back in what seems to be fairly early.
Positive, positively, it gives us 6 weeks until our first game of the season. We do have quite a heavy fixture schedule with our first game next Friday against West Bridgford. So we felt we wanted a week, 10 days lead into that first game. We've not gone at full tilt yet. We're just trying to build the capacity of the players. So first day was quite a light introduction to football session. We did some testing, some physical testing, as well as a little bit more intense training yesterday, and we've been screening the players here at the stadium today. So we're building them up and adding to their capacity each day, but already trying to drop in some technical and tactical aspects in terms of how we're looking to play and preparing for the game against West Bridgford next Friday.